Quit searching for the next quick, easy way. Because you know what? Every single one of them, every single strategy you're going to learn is going to take a while to master.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Unstoppable Woman podcast. I am super excited to bring to you today a fabulous guest. Edna Keep is my guest today, and she is, I'm going to call you a real estate mogul. She has done amazing things with real estate. And we were talking just now before we went live about our commonality with mindset. So we are going to really dig into that intersection and how she's worked her mindset to really grow an extraordinary real estate portfolio and really, quite an extraordinary story, which I'm going to hand over to you in a moment, Edna, around, where you started and where you are now. I think my audience really loves the story, loves to understand what it takes to go from, quite frankly, a challenging beginning or an ordinary beginning to exceptional success, both on the financial side and holistically with your life. So welcome to the show, Edna. Super happy to have you here on the Unstoppable Woman podcast.
Thanks for having me, Amira. It's my pleasure. Totally.
Great. Okay. So that was my little lead up. I know your story, but why don't you tell the women listening where you started your journey? You can pick as early as you want, but sure. I know there were some pretty salient moments in your life that turned things for you.
It was. So I became a single mom at the age of 16. So that was probably one of the biggest defining moments of my life. And I always say, what, I probably wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't had some early challenges like that to grow through. So kind of the worst of times turned into the best of times, but you don't see that at the time. I still to this day feel I have 4 daughters, and I tell them, like, do not have a child young. Like, it's so hard. It's so hard. But you know what, I think that's what brought me to where I am today. And, when I was a single mom, I lived in subsidized housing, and I had her going to subsidized daycare. So it was totally different from my 2 youngest girls, because my youngest girls were born much later. And like the lifestyles were like night and day, right? And it's so much nicer to have money and the time freedom and everything else to do and be able to do also what you love to do. And that's kind of those biggest defining moments. But what took me to real estate was I was actually a financial advisor. I considered at that point in my life, I was as successful as I was ever going to be. I loved what I did. I was making about $250,000 a year, which was a big deal from somebody who used to make like out of high school for the first 8 years of my life. I think I was making like $14,000 a year, just to kind of give you an idea of the difference. We're going from there to where I went.
So let's stop there for a second.
Sure.
So you're single mom at 16, you're just out of high school, and you're making $14 an hour. How do you go from, because there were some lessons there to go from, a lot of people don't move beyond the $14 an hour job. Like, how did you go from $14 an hour to $250, which is a big leap, right? Like most people would be, as you said, like, that's great. That's stunning.
And I felt like that. And then, I actually found myself stuck there for about 8 years too. But, how it came about is it was a frustration in my life. And I kept having people tell me at earning this it was actually $14,000 a year. You got to learn to live within your means. And, and I thought, what, if I'm going to learn something, I want to learn how to be rich. I don't want to learn to live within my means. It's probably the same learning curve.
That's fantastic.
One's like this and one's like this, right?
You had that as a very coherent thought. You remember thinking that. I love that. Yeah. These are the things, I just want to point this out.
Sure.
If you're listening to this and it trigger something. Yeah, I had a thought like that. Maybe not the same one, but that, like, pay attention to those. I don't want to do it that way. That doesn't sit with me, that little bit of outrage, and see what you can do with it, because that that was a turning point thought for you.
Yeah. And it didn't turn quickly, but I just remember thinking like, there's gotta be a better way. Like, I don't want to live my life like this. I want something different. And for a long time, I listened to the people around me. Like, what do you expect? You just got your grade 12. You couldn't go to university. You're a single mom. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this. Until I just got to the point where I was just tired of people telling me what I couldn't do. And I just started doing stuff, whatever that happened to be. I started taking some correspondence courses because I couldn't quit a good job to do nothing. I had a kid to support. I couldn't just go back to school, or, there was different things like that, but I could do things on the side. I could study on the side. I could take courses. And, when I started to study to be a financial advisor, which was a big step, I did it on evenings and weekends, working a full-time office job. I was working as an office administrator, and on evenings and weekends, I was training to be a financial advisor.
So you had a little hustle there.
Yeah, there are side hustles, because there was no such thing as giving up one to do another. At that point, I had no other financial support, nobody else to back me up, and it was a big deal even at that time, Amira, because when I was first approached about getting into financial services, I had to get licensed, and the course was like $300 or something silly like that. And I had no money to pay for that. And the guy who brought me in, he said, well, how about I'll help you, and then when you make your first sale or two, you can just pay me back. And I said, oh, well, that works. So I got all gung-ho and made it happen. And, within about 5 years, I was way ahead of the fellow who had the $300. Like, that's when I got into financial services full time.
Let me ask you a question around that. So a lot of people, they're given a gift like that. They're given an opportunity like that. And one, they say no. Okay. They don't receive the help, or they don't follow through on it. Right. Like, there is this thing, and maybe you and I maybe don't relate to this, but I'm sure you've seen some version of this in your life, where dad pays for the child to do something, or mom sets someone else up, or you get this gift, and then you don't actually take advantage of it. You don't work it. You're not all in yourself.
Yeah.
And what do you think was your differentiating factor? Like, why were you someone who, if one, said yes to the help, and two, went all in and didn't just blow it off?
Well, I was hungry. Like, I wanted more. There was a reason I applied for this position. And I just got excited listening to it, thinking, you know what, that's something I could do. I could learn that on the side. And so, I was kind of disappointed when I realized there was going to be a cost, but he said it's no big deal. Like, it's a small amount of money. I could pay him back. And I thought, and I will, because I'm going to learn how to do this, and I'm going to make the money they told me I'm going to make. And I did, like, very, very quickly. It was paid back, and then, went on from there. But, it was kind of funny, though, those people that got me started, got me excited. Years later, they were gone. They were still back at their daytime job, and never did really expand into financial services. But I loved it. I remember phoning them up going, okay, I need to make some appointments. I got people lined up. What time do you have? When do you have time? When do you have time? When do you have time? And they're going, whoa, and I got to do this, and I got life too, and da. And I'm going, well, then give me somebody else. It's like, I'm going, and
you were gung ho, and you were, in my language, unstoppable, but you understood what it was going to take, and you were unafraid of reaching out and doing the work, which is very much getting in front of people, right?
It was,
yeah.
It was.
So do you think you were a natural born salesperson?
I don't think people are naturally born, but I'm very much a social person, and I like getting to know people. I love getting to know people. And so that part was easy for me. But, for years, Amira, I never got any credit for being that kind of person, because you're not given no pat on the head for being a social person in school. That there's downsides to that. You're given a pat on the head to be the nice little quiet kid who doesn't do any, you're not challenging, and you're good in school and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't that person. I was just an average C student, and I really didn't like people telling me what to do. So I wasn't the one who was going like, oh, pick You know what I mean? So I was never a teacher's pet.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter to me. And I remember having a conversation with a teacher later in life who actually passed me in his class with a 50 just to get me out of there. It was a social studies class, which I hated. And it was like, didn't matter how hard I studied, I can get above 50. And ran into him later in life because he kind of hung out with my brothers. They came to the city to ride our football games. And I said to him, because my brothers were bragging about how successful I was. And this was just when I was a financial advisor. And I said, did you ever think that I would turn out to be a success one day? And he said, well, and he had this long beard, Edna, he said, I always thought if you could find something where you could use your social skills, that you could do well. But nobody teaches you that you can get a financial planning career because of your social skills. Like that's not a check mark on your report card.
I think it's so interesting. I've heard so many people say, if you want a good salesperson, hire the C student, right? And it's fascinating. Like, what is that? What is the trait? And they were people who weren't like working for the grade. They were a little bit of the rule breakers, right? They're willing to take a little bit more risk, and they are paying attention to all this auditory stuff that's going on, all this social stuff, all the people stuff. Interesting. There's probably more to it than that, but I'm always triangulating information there.
Where you can really get some information on that, and it made so much sense to me when I read it. Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book, and it's my favorite book. Why do A students work for C students and B students work for the government? And I love that book because it was like, hey, I was a classic C student. And when I read his book, it went check mark, check mark, check mark. I was a classic C student. I didn't care about getting 80s and 90s. I honestly did not care. I didn't like it if I got 50s, but if I was in the average, in the middle, and I got to have fun and do what I enjoyed, I might. But that's where sales is key, because you want to have fun in your work. You want to be optimistic. You want to share things. And I loved learning the stuff I wanted to learn. Not necessarily all the crap that I thought, I'm never going to use that. Like,
I have the
war was won and then people were killed. I don't need to know that stuff,
I had the reverse experience. I was that A student, right? I was the one that cared about all that. And I had to really learn how to get over the like caring what other people thought and working for the grade and dotting the I's and crossing the T's and all of that. I had to really come out of my shell. And I was always interested in people, right? And I always cared about people, but like learning sales as a skill, that was, much more challenging for me. But once mastery is an ongoing process, but once I got better at it, then I realized how rewarding it was. I had a total reframe of what I made it mean, which was, this is how I help people. Right? This is how I make their lives better by helping them. That was a total reframe for me. And then I could get behind it. So it's a big breakthrough. Okay. So what's next in the story of Edna Keep? Like, where does she go next?
So, I kind of got stagnant because like I said, I hit a goal that was way beyond what I ever could fathom for myself. My goal was $100,000 a year. And my second year as financial advisor, I hit 187 and then to 250. And then it stayed around there, fluctuated between, 225 and 300, that sort of thing. But it never really got any further.
And was that because you couldn't see yourself going further or
in that career? I realized after it was that career, it was like the next level of stuff I needed to do. I just wasn't interested in studying it. But when I found real estate, then it was a different story. And then even then I got to a certain level in real estate and it was like, I don't want to study that anymore. Now I coach and train people and I love it. So I feel like every single thing that I went through my life brought me to this coaching and training part. And I'm really good at it. But I'm not teaching people to go buy, 500 units at a time. I'm teaching people to buy their first or second and third multifamily building, which is right in my wheelhouse. We've bought, plenty ourselves and we stuck with the smaller units mainly till we started dealing with different partners who took me larger, but I don't have to do all the day-to-day stuff. I have partners that do that. And I still get to do my most fun part, which is the socializing part. teaching and training and talking to people like that, helping them buy their first 2 or 3 buildings and getting them kind of on their path to what can be next. And that's what I love. I feel like everything that I've ever done's brought me to this point in my life.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? When you get to a place, then you can connect the dots, right? You can look backwards and go, oh, that makes sense.
I needed to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I needed to go through those challenges. So one of the things that I try to ask myself as quickly as possible, whenever stuff's happening that I'm not liking, it's like, why is this happening for me? Like, what is my takeaway here? Because the faster you can adopt that kind of an attitude, it's not, wallowing in self-pity and whatever else, because I don't care who you are, if you're growing and changing and doing great things, there's crap happening to you all the time.
Yeah.
You just have to learn to deal with it.
It's a perspective. It's the law of relativity. It's like, is the universe happening for you or against you? And it's like this, it really needs to be this binary distinction. Like, this is my stance. I either think the world's against me or the world is for me. Yeah. And if you think the world is for you and you think that 100% of the time, then, in business, there's going to be waves, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be things that come. Now, why is this happening for me? And that creates a completely different perspective. Then you're looking for the lesson in it. Then you're looking for how you can grow. Then you're looking for how you can leverage it. Yeah. So much of the time when I'm working with my clients and something, some chaos happens, some big, thing has just like sideswiped them. Yeah. And I'm like, well, look at this and this and this and this, and like just that outside lens and the perspective on it. Then they're like, oh my God, this is how I'm actually going to scale, right? This is actually an opportunity rather than a challenge, but it really takes that mindset. So my next question for you is, how did you learn that? Did you, because I studied this material. I had to be the A student with this mindset stuff and like go deep and be like, oh, that's what that means. And oh, that's what that means. And then hold myself to the higher standard of like, not just thinking about it, but applying it.
Doing it.
Did you learn that on your own, or did you study the mindset pieces along with the tactical, like how to be a financial planner and how to do the real estate?
Definitely study the mindset pieces, and I study it more and more every day, because I believe that that's what takes you to every single level. I would say new level, new devil. And doesn't matter where you are. If you're going to the next level, and I think we're always meant to be setting new goals and challenge ourselves. When you're going there, you got to change. You got to change your self-image. You got to change the way that you think. You got to change the way you do things. And it's not easy, but it's so much more fun than getting stuck at the same level for like 8 years in a row,
Yeah.
Like,
so let's talk about that. Like when you were in that 8 years, okay, which is a long time when you think about it, right? Yeah. I mean, you weren't struggling, you were doing well. You were at that 250 level, but what was the kinesthetic, emotional experience of that? How did you handle? Were you happy-go-lucky, like, okay, I'm making good money, but I'm just here? Or were you frustrated with playing at that same level?
There was a lot of other stuff going on in my life. Like I got married, I had 2 more kids, so it was like, oh, this fits in really nice with my life. Like I was down to working 3 days a week, eventually 2 days a week. I never did go back full time after my 2 girls were born. They're 19 and 17 now. And and it was just like, well, this just fits. But once they started growing up and getting more independent and stuff, then it was like, ooh, yeah, I don't want to go back there full time. What else can I do? And that's when I was introduced to real estate. And that's how we started getting into real estate. And we ended up owning 50 doors in 18 months. And it was huge for us, because our huge goal that we thought we set was 50 doors in, I don't know, 5-10 years. We didn't care. We thought that was so huge that we didn't even know if we'd ever reach it. But when we hit it in 18 months, it was like, there's something here. And it was fun. And I was, and it was so different, and it was so creative. And it was, dealing with investors, and you're dealing with buildings, you're dealing with partners, and you're around like-minded people. And all of a sudden I was with a whole group of people that were growing and changing and learning, and, and it was like, wow, I love this. How did I get stuck there for 8 years? I remember feeling like that when I first got, but not for the last few years. It was kind of like, da, da, da. I didn't want da 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 anymore. I wanted some excitement in my life and to do stuff and be a mover and a shaker again, sort of thing.
Yeah, be more that entrepreneurial spirit instead of just like punching a clock a little bit. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So you went into this business with your husband. Is that the we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And let's talk about closing the gap on time, right? You set a goal and you did that faster than you ever thought possible, which is like what I sell. Like, you can do this. So let's break it down. So you set a goal, and then what did you do next? Like, you obviously were learning and studying and you were taking action, but what were the things that you had to really work through? Like, give me a mindset piece and give me a tactical piece that you had to really work through to close the gap on time, to do that faster.
Well, you know what? Hired a coach was one thing, and they'd already done what we were trying to do. So they took a lot of fear away. And also we partnered with somebody who had already done more than like, they had 20 doors, I think, when we partnered with them. So they also took a lot of our fear away, because it was like, we'd say, well, what about this? They'd have an answer. Well, what about this? And they'd have an answer. It's like, yeah, no, you don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about that. No, you've done it. Oh, okay. And then you
that cut down on the spin so much, like all the unknowns, you just kind of like move through.
Yeah. Okay. And now I feel like I'm that person for my students and my clients, is I'm taking all that unknown because I've done it. And yeah, you haven't done it, but I'm right here. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you through all those steps that you need to take. And you don't need to know the 150 steps you need to take. It's just, let's just work on the first few, because sometimes I think if people realized how many steps they had to go through and to get where they ended up, you look back and say, would I sign up for that again? Yeah, we might not. We might not sign up for that.
But wouldn't you? I mean,
I would. I absolutely would. Yeah.
Right.
But if you told somebody, if you're signing up somebody new, so say for myself, bringing in a new coaching student, and I'm saying, you could have 778 doors in 14 years, but this is going to happen. You're going to lose out on deals that you wanted so bad. You're going to have investors get mad at you. You're going to have deals that go bad and go wrong. You're going to have tenants who just totally trash your place. And you're going to, fight with the ORT over security deposits. And, all this list of stuff. If you told everybody everything, they'd go, yeah, no, I'm not signing.
That sounds like a mess.
Why would you want to do that? That's crazy. Well, because if you didn't, and if you didn't do it, like I used to, when people even tell me stories about that when I first met them, they would make it funny. Like they would tell the stories, oh yeah, and then we did this and we did that, and this happened, that happened. I just laugh. Oh, I want to keep knowing you. And I didn't take it to heart as like how devastating that could be to have a $10,000 damage to your property, and people, if they're thinking of, putting $10,000 into a coaching program, and they think of a $10,000 damage to their building. Well, in the meantime, we'd bought properties that were making us $1,000 a month. So that 10,000 wasn't that devastating, It hurt because it's just the idea, but you're also making money from many other ways. So
and don't you find that those challenges that you've moved through have, like, at least for me, they have allowed me to be so much stronger and confident and resilient, and actually like love myself so much more, because I now know I can handle anything.
Can handle a lot more than you ever thought.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that makes it like, oh, that's amazing. And having the tools going through it to know, this is not going to be devastating. This is part of the road. Right. And learning that mistakes, temporary setbacks, temporary failures are not, I think when I started, they meant so much more to me, that the small things were just like so crushing. And I had to really learn I had to change my perspective. That's not a big deal.
Yeah,
actually. Yeah. And you can't, my experience is that you can't skip that step. You have to actually go through it yourself.
You
It's
do.
easier with a mentor, but you have to be someone who goes through it to actually understand that you are resilient, you are capable.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
wouldn't change it for the
I can
world.
handle. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can handle a lot. And one of the things I found that really allowed me to handle a lot was taking up meditation.
Oh, nice.
Practicing meditation. Yeah, I just found that like at one period of my life it was just growing leaps and bounds, and I look back and realize, yeah, that's when I really learned about meditating,
Yeah. What
and
kind of
it really
meditation do you
helped.
do?
I started with a program called HoloSync because I was one of
Oh, I
those
know
people that
Holosync.
just
Yeah.
couldn't sit. And
Yeah.
they said, no, you don't have to sit. You can like listen as you fall asleep at night, or listen as you're waking up in the morning, and it works because the way that these sounds are hitting your brain, it's putting you into a meditative state that otherwise it would take you like an hour to get into. And it did work. Like I followed their protocol for like 5 years straight, and I absolutely loved it. Recommended it to many, many, many
Yeah.
people.
No, I love Holosync.
Yeah.
Did not do it for 5 years, but that's great. I love it.
Mhm.
Um, he's no longer alive. What was his name? Bill something?
Paris.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Okay. So
And
you
he
did,
was challenged, super challenged. Like if you ever listen to his story, man, he had a lot of crap he went through in his
I don't
life.
know his
He
story.
had to learn to meditate. He had a lot of challenges, but a lot of good came out. Again, if he hadn't had such a challenging life, he probably wouldn't have did so much with it, to
Yeah.
help himself first and then help others.
Yeah. Really fantastic. How did you phase out of meditating, or did you just move into
I
something
still
else?
meditate. I just don't use the HoloSync program,
Got it.
because there's
Okay.
just been a whole bunch of other ones that have come along that I've used, and now I can zone in and out very easily.
I love
I just
it.
have
I
that
love
kind of
it.
control.
That's
So
fantastic. Any other tools that you'd like to share with the audience that you think have been instrumental to your success? You've talked about mentors. You've talked about meditation. You've talked about the hustle, right? Like making it work, not looking too far ahead, taking those first steps. What other key pieces have been part of your journey?
I think focus is a big one too, because I see what I see happens a lot. Like there's so many different ways, especially in our world in real estate. There's so many different ways to make money in real estate. So people will start a course, and then the work will come, and they'll start looking elsewhere. They'll start watching YouTube videos and listening to other webinars, and it's like, yeah, that looks easier. And
Hmm.
then so then they'll start down that path. And then they'll realize, yeah, that's kind of hard too. And in the meantime, they'll start watching more YouTube videos and webinars, and then they start down the third path, and they never really get anywhere because they don't pick something to just focus on. So when people start to work with me, I tell them, like, stop all that, quit searching for the next quick, easy way, because you know what? Every single one of them, every single strategy you're going to learn is going to take a while to master. And none of them are easier than the other, because I looked at them all. Like I looked at wholesaling, and I looked at, notes and all that. Every single one of them has a learning curve. Do the learning curve. And then if you want to add something on, add it on. But don't buy a course, shelf it, and think the next one's going to be easier, because it's not. It's not
Yeah.
going to be easier. Maybe there's times when you might buy a course and go, yeah, that's not for me. That happens. It happened to me many times. But you still have to pick a focus and then focus on it, because otherwise you're all over the map and you don't ever really get anywhere.
Yeah. Do you feel like you did that with your financial planning career as well?
With the financial planning, like, because there's again so many different ways you could go, and I just decided to focus on mutual funds and a little bit of life insurance. I didn't do a ton of life insurance. I like the growth part of the mutual funds, and then I also like the long-term buy and hold multifamily in real estate. So, but it took us a while to pick a focus too. Like it took us a year before we decided on which strategy we wanted to focus on.
I love it. I love it. Are your daughters getting in on the real estate business?
Not so much, they're more artsy fartsy. So they think they want to be hairdressers or nail techs or, stuff like that yet.
Mhm.
But we always tell them, you know what, you're going to have to own real estate to keep your lifestyle, because they've had a pretty good lifestyle, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And they're pretty young. Yeah, one is two are 17, so I have a foster daughter too, and one is 19. So the 19-year-old just graduated, and she's waitressing right now, which she loves. She's very social, but she also has her life insurance license, because they said to her, that is a good place to learn, and it's also social as well. So good place to learn how to sell, because I think learning how to sell is really key in the world.
Yeah. And do you find that your daughters that are older that you had when you were younger, that they have a different perspective? Like, did they learn different things from you than the ones that are, 17 and 19 and grew up with more money, right? Like my women are always like a
Yeah.
little like hate love with the money thing. Like, is it going to change me? Is it going to make me into someone I'm not? Like, talk a little bit about what happens with money and having a family. You spoke a little bit about like it's nicer to like have the time and like
Yeah.
not have to be so stressed.
Yeah.
Were there ever any concerns about
Well,
raising a family
my
with
oldest
lots of money?
daughter loves my girls. Like they're to this day, they're very close.
Yeah.
They get together all the time. They see each other all the time. But there's a little bit of jealousy there. It's like, yeah, you guys get to take trips. You guys both have nice cars. I never got any of that.
Yeah.
And she doesn't take it out on them, but she gives me a little bit of hassle about it. Like, well, why can't I, as a 40-year-old, like get a car too? Well, it doesn't work like that. Like, you're out on your own now. It's just different. And I wish I could have, but I just couldn't. But there's things that she went through that made her a great person today, that our girls are maybe a little bit more sheltered, a little bit more coddled than she was. So it's all relative in the long run. I read a book recently, and it said, you don't do your kids any favors, like keeping them at home till they're 25 and not letting them out into the real world. And you know what? We're very much like that with the youngest ones. It's like, no, we don't want you to go. We just want you to stay here. And yet at the same time, because like we all get along so good, at the same time, it's, you realize you're not doing them any favors, because they don't go through as many challenges. Like my two youngest especially have not had anything like the challenges I had as a young person.
Yeah. And you want to protect them, but then you also like, how are they going to be resilient in life if they don't have some challenge to overcome and move through? Yeah. Interesting.
And sometimes I worry that I take the drive away that I ended up with. And then at other times, especially my 19-year-old who's starting to get in the workforce, like she sits beside me on my sales training calls. She reads Think and Grow Rich or The Power of the Subconscious Mind. And she's getting stuff that I wasn't even introduced to till much later in life, like not even introduced to. And she's getting all that at 19. She sets goals to get high tips at her work. And she sets goals to go to a new restaurant that has even the ability to get more tips. Like she thinks like that. I couldn't even think like that when I was at her age. It was like, oh, I was just happy to have an office job where I didn't have to work on weekends, $14 an hour, and she's like, oh, I make more on tips than I do on my wage. And she's always trying to best herself, not so much the others, but best herself. And when she gets kudos from her manager, oh, Mom, look at this. And she shows me that. Oh, they send the mommy on the Facebook.
You're proud mama. That's awesome. I love it.
But it's so nice to see. And that was the difference. I wasn't going through that growth path when I had my oldest. So she didn't get that mom either. This one's got that mom that can help with some of that direction. Read this book, go be part of this.
Right. And confidence is a big thing that you've talked about a lot. How do you feel like you help your clients build their confidence, and how did you help your daughter build her confidence? Is it really about like presenting? I'm a big, study person, Think and Grow Rich, Power of Subconscious Mind, right? Like all of that. But are there tactical things that you help people with as well in terms of confidence?
Yeah. Even simple things like meditating, saying affirmations to yourself. Like I always tell you have to know, like, and trust yourself before other people are going to know, like, and trust you. So a lot of it is building up a self-image that you want to be. And I always say the number one way to do that is to be around people you want to be like, don't take advice from people who haven't done what you want to do. That's why I love what you're doing, Amira. You're showing people the way, you're helping people, and you're showing them what worked for you. And other people are never going to take the exact same path we did. But if they pick this from my talk and this one from somebody else's talk, and Amira always says this, and start to internalize that and realize that they've got the same ability that we have. They just need to hone their skills and understand the mindset and be open to what's going to come their way, and not and to start to think, why is this happening for me instead of to me?
Totally. I love that. That's fantastic. Okay. So before I ask you my last question, where can people find you? There's your URL behind you in the video, but if people are listening, and if people are listening, where would they go?
Just ednakeep.com is my website. My email address is edna@ednakeep.com. And I do a lot of free stuff. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. So on any platform that as their favorite, I'm there. I just have to Google my name and they'll find me. And if they ever want to chat, I'm open to that too.
Awesome. I love it. Fantastic. Okay. So my last question for you is, what makes you an unstoppable woman?
You know what? I have a belief in myself that I can do whatever I set my mind to. And I know that because of what I've done, like going from a single mom earning at $14 an hour to $2. That was the biggest gap for me. Knowing I could get there just makes me realize I can get really anywhere I want to go. But I also realize it doesn't come by saying I'm gonna and just thinking about it. There's steps that have to happen. So not only does your mindset have to grow, your skill set has to grow. So you have to understand strategies and you have to do the work. You have to do the mental and the mindset work, and you have to get better at what you do all the time.
Yeah. Mindset plus skill set. So huge. You put those two things together and you really take action. Rocket fuel. Love it. Exactly. Love it. So thank you so much for joining us, Edna. I just want to share some reflections with you. Your energy is contagious. You're so enthusiastic. You're very generous with your stories and how you talk about the truth, like maybe I'm coddling my kids, what do I do here? Like maybe that this is what I'm doing, and this is different. And I think it makes you that much more of a trustworthy person to the world, to be able to hear your story and understand that you went from being a single mom at 16, making $14,000 a year to, I don't know, maybe you should share with us, because I didn't actually ask you this question, what your portfolio is worth now, right?
75 million.
75 million, guys. Okay. This is
778 doors.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And this is someone who has done both mindset and skill set. She's such a great example of doing both and working both in parallel, and that persistence and that focus. So thank you so much for being here and being a fabulous guest.
Amira. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Hey there. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed that episode. If you're ready to take it to the next level and want to make your income breakthrough, then I am personally inviting you to join us at the Unstoppable Woman Income Breakthrough Summit. It is happening November 5th, 6th, and 7th. And I would love to have you there, especially if you're someone who is high achiever, but hitting a block. I want to show you how to master your marketing, master your mindset, and master scaling your business and growing it to the next level. This is a 3-day immersive event. I will be the only one teaching you, and you'll get me for 3 full days. This is the place that people make their breakthrough, and I would hate for you to miss it, and I would love for you to be there. So please check it out at joinamiralive.com, and I'll see you there.